immigration. The Pope has a different take on immigrants. He, in fact, spoke out to people who might not feel comfortable with immigrants. And let me just read to you his sort of poignant words. The Pope said yesterday, "Perhaps it will not be easy for you to look into their souls. Perhaps you will be challenged by their diversity, but know that they also possess resources meant to be shared. So do not be afraid to welcome them." What do you think of the Pope's words?
Well, I think his words are beautiful, and I respect the Pope, and I like the Pope very much. I will say this. We have a country that is going through tremendous problems. We owe $19 trillion. So, number one, we can't afford this process. We have tremendous crime problems. As you know, the illegal immigrants are coming in, and you just have to look at San Francisco and Kate or so many other instances. California 2 weeks ago, where a woman was absolutely decimated, killed, raped by an illegal immigrant, a veteran at 66 years of age, by the way. And many, thousands and thousands of cases. We're having tremendous crime waves. We have a lot of problems coming in. We have drugs pouring over the borders. We have to seal up our borders. We have to do something about illegal immigration. And people like my plan very much, and I think it's a plan that's going to happen.
Okay, let's talk about your plan, because it's a two-parter. You talk about building a wall, and then you
build a wall.
Sure.
That's right.
And then you talk about deporting the 11 to 12 million undocumented workers who are
illegal
here.
Immigrants.
Illegal immigrants who are living here. So let's talk. That's the part that you have not been terribly specific about. How would you specifically go about doing 11 million mass deportations?
Through good management and through a process. And the process is the bad ones go and they never come back. They're never coming back. The really good ones, and there are many, they will go and they will come back legally. They will come back on an expedited system, and they'll come back legally, Allison.
Okay, but when
if you go into the 1950s, Dwight Eisenhower, who was a respected president, was doing the same thing. He had to get rid of the illegal immigrants, and he did that. He got them out of the country.
But when
there were a lot of problems. It was done in the 1950s by Dwight Eisenhower.
But let's talk about what it looks like nowadays. Would you use the National Guard? Would you use the police?
Different
the
forms,
Army?
And it'll take place, and it'll be done effectively and warmly and humanely, and a lot of people will be very happy about it. But you know that I had a good Hispanic poll the other day, because the Hispanics, as an example, don't want to see, the ones that are here legally don't want to see this, where everyone's pouring into the country illegally.
Sure.
And we're going to have to do something about it. You use the word illegal immigrant. That's what it is. You're illegally in the country. So we have to do something about it. We're going to build a wall. We're going to let people in, but they're going to come in legally.
I mean, Mr. Trump, yes, they're here illegally, but often they've been invited in. I mean, you know what our history is with undocumented workers. They've been given jobs.
Right.
They often pay
coming
taxes.
Back legally.
I mean,
they're going to be coming back in, but they're going to be coming back in legally.
But, Mr. Trump, I want you to specifically explain how you are going to get rid of them. Because you know what this harkens to? What it reminds me, at least, of, is remember the case of Elian Gonzalez, where the little Cuban boy, there was this dispute about he belonged in Cuba, he was Cuban, and the federal agents went into his apartment, and it was splashed all over the media, and it gripped the nation, because you watched federal agents pull this boy from his extended family. And you are talking about doing that with 11 million people. Are you going to separate families?
No, we're not separating families. We're taking the families and we're taking them as a unit. And we did it with Dwight Eisenhower, did it with over 1 million people in the 1950s. And it was something that was done. Now we're a politically correct society. We can't do anything. We're moribund. We're a society that can't do anything anymore. We can't function anymore.
So
we have millions of people in the country illegally.
Yes, so you're prepared to use the police.
Listen, they're not paying taxes. They're taking jobs from other people. We have a country that desperately needs jobs. They're taking jobs from other people.
Millions of them are paying taxes.
Allison, what I'm saying is this. It starts with we build a wall, and the wall will be very easily built and a very effective wall. It's going to have a big open gate, and people are going to come into the country through that gate. They're going to come in legally. It's going to be a country that's run. It's going to be a country with a border. We're not going to have people pouring drugs across the border. Right now, the cartels are bringing drugs across the border. They're bringing the drugs, and they're taking out the money.
Look,
that's the
no
way
one wants the criminal aspect.
Billions of dollars is
you're with everyone.
We're
no
going
one.
to get rid. And by the way, do you know that the gangs that you see, all of these terrible gangs that you're seeing, many of those gangs are made up of illegal immigrants, and they're tough dudes. And by the way, they're going day one. They're going to be out of here. We're going to get rid of them day one.
Okay,
the rest is the good people. They're going, and they're coming back in an expedited way. They're going to come back legally. And you watch with good management how nicely that can work.
Okay, we will wait to see what your specific strategy is for that. But let's talk about another topic that the Pope has talked about, and that's climate change. The Pope has said that he is clear that this is a problem that cannot be left to a future generation. Do you agree that climate change is a pressing problem?
No. I think that clean air is a pressing problem. You want to have clean air. You want to have clean water. That's very important to me, and I've won many environmental awards. I am not a believer in climate change. Now, it's gone global warming and climate change, and now they call it actually extreme weather. That's the new one because weather seems to be a little more extreme. But actually, if you look, a lot of the big floods and a lot of the big things, in 1890, they had the greatest flood. In 1904, they had the greatest rainstorm. You know, look, it's weather. And we have bad floods. I can't watch the evening news anymore. Every time you turn on the evening news, they show there's a big rainstorm, there's a tornado, there's this. I mean, you can't watch the news anymore. It's always weather. And frankly, it's been that way for so long. And it honestly, it's called weather changes. And you have storms, and you have rain, and you have beautiful days. But I do not believe that we should imperil the companies within our country. And by the way, China's doing nothing. You know, if you look at these other countries, they're doing nothing. All they do is talk. But we're going to imperil jobs. We're going to imperil, actually, the middle class, and the lower classes are going to be the people with no money are going to be imperiled by doing this because it costs so much, and nobody knows exactly if it's going to work. You have scientists. I don't know if you remember a number of years ago in Europe, the scientists were passing around emails and notes to each other talking about what a hoax it is.
Well, look, I know what you're referring to, the East Anglia situation where a couple of scientists were using the wrong data.
I'm saying this. I believe in clean air, immaculate air.
Sure.
I believe in clean water, all of those things. But I don't think we can destroy our country. We have, if we have climate change or if we have global warming, it's going to be of the nuclear form. Yes. Because we have incompetent politicians watching over us when it comes to nuclear weapons.
So you're saying that you don't think that climate change or global warming is man-made, and you actually don't believe that it is a pressing problem. It's good to get you on the record with that. Let's talk about the new polls that are out this morning, and that is there's a Quinnipiac poll. We can perhaps put it up here on the screen for you. It is just out at 6 a.m. this morning, and basically what it shows is that your lead has slipped a bit. So before the CNN debate in August, you were at 28%. Now you're at 25%. You, of course, are still the Republican frontrunner. However, there are people who are catching up to you. Ben Carson was at 12%. Now he's at 17%. Carly Fiorina was at 5%. Now she's at 12%. Jeb Bush has gone up in the past month to 10%. Marco Rubio from 7% to 9%. Do you think your lead is slipping?
No, I don't. I actually think it's doing very well. If you look at the Fox poll that just came out, it's an even bigger margin than this. And if you look at the NBC poll, it's a much bigger margin. Then if you look at Zogby, and if you look at Reuters, and if you look at some of these other polls, it's through the roof. No, I don't think I heard your statement. Is it slipping? I know you want to get people to watch. You know, it was sort of interesting yesterday. Your reporter in South Carolina, who was absolutely terrible, she covered my speech. I made a speech to the African-American Chamber of Commerce in South Carolina. Yes. Wonderful people. And the room was full. Every seat was full. When I went to the stage, everybody rushed forward. They all rushed to the front of the room. It was a ballroom. They all rushed to the front of the room. And when they did that, you had half of the seats in the back were empty because everybody was standing in the front. And we had a great time. It was like a great thing. She starts off, the CNN reporter, absolutely horrible reporter. She starts off saying, oh, look, the room is half empty. The room wasn't half empty. Everybody was standing right next to me in the front of the room.
That's not what I heard.
And I want to tell you, you can tell Jeff Zucker, I think it was terrible, disgusting reporting.
Listen, that's not what I heard her say. What I heard her say about the Charleston, South Carolina event was that what was surprising about it was it was mostly white people. So this was the African-American Chamber of Commerce, but that it was populated mostly by a white
No,
audience.
they had many African Americans. They had many white people, too. But the room was full, and they all rushed to the front, which was a great honor. I let them stand there. They stood there the whole speech. But, she showed empty seats. Well, of course, there were empty seats because the people are standing in the front of the room. So it was just another hit job, but it's one of those things. I guess you get used to it after a while.
Mr. Trump,
honestly, Allison, a terrible reporter.
Mr. Trump, I think she's a wonderful reporter.
All right, then you and I disagree on something.
We do disagree on that. Let's talk about Governor Huckabee, because Governor Huckabee has also talked about the Pope's visit, and what he found most disturbing to him was that there were people who may not be aligned with the Catholic Church's values who were invited to see the Pope in Washington, D.C. An openly gay Episcopal bishop, transgendered activists, a nun who's an activist. Let me play for you what Governor Mike Huckabee said about questioning President Obama's faith. Listen. Statements.
Well, I'm doing very well with evangelicals, and I spend a lot of time with evangelicals. And I must tell you, many evangelicals feel the way that Mike does. Many, many of them do. They feel that the president has not been good in terms of Christianity. He's stopping religious freedom to a certain extent. They feel very, very hurt by the president. Maybe that's the best word, and disappointed by the president having to do with Christianity. And, Mike is expressing himself, and I see that when I'm out on the trail and I meet with evangelicals. I'm leading every poll, every single poll in Iowa, everywhere with the evangelicals. So I understand what's going on, and they feel very disappointed by the president. So what Mike is saying is not that surprising for me to hear. It's a very severe statement, too. It's a very strong statement.
It is.
But in dealing and in making speeches to thousands of evangelicals and taking questions, they're very hurt by the president. There's no question about it.
But do you agree that President Obama is pretending to be a Christian?
I don't get involved in people's faith, Allison. It's not for me to discuss his faith. That's for him to discuss. I don't get involved in his faith.
Let's talk about what's going on with you and Fox News. Why are you in this spat with them?
Well, only because Fox News has not treated me fairly.
What does that mean? How so? How have they not treated you fairly?
Speaking of polls, I think they just announced a poll this morning or something, and to the best of my knowledge, I'm number one in that poll, which is an interesting little, and by a lot, which is an interesting dichotomy. But Fox News has not treated me fairly, and certain people have not. They have pundits on the show. One of them made a total fool of himself last night. He totally lost it. It looked like he was having a nervous breakdown on television, and he used words that were so unbelievable that maybe he'll be fined or censured or thrown off. He's a total fool. A guy named Rich Lowry, who I never even heard of, but he said something that I've never heard on television before. I was shocked. But he lost it. It was wonderful watching this guy lose it because, he's a bad guy. But they are not fair to me, and I've expressed it to them. They understand. For instance, they won't put up certain poll numbers, and the poll numbers are phenomenal for Trump. So I say, why aren't you putting up those numbers? Well, we're not going to put up the numbers.
I think that
the poll numbers are fantastic for me, and I say that's not fair.
You were talking about, and the reason they don't want to use it, it was an online survey, and that's not, sort of considered one of the legitimate polls, the go-to polls that we use. But back to Fox for a second. You say that they're treating you unfairly. Do you not want to hear other voices that criticize you? Is that, if they have a pundit on who doesn't criticize you.
And I don't mind being criticized, and I don't mind it at all. And I won't use names, but there are certain people that criticize unfairly. If I do something wrong, Allison, I have very thick skin. I don't mind being criticized. I'll never, ever complain because I know when I do something wrong. I'm a smart person. I do something wrong. I do things wrong. And when I do, I don't mind. They can come at me 15 different ways. But when I'm right or when I don't deserve something, I think it's very, very unfair to speak incorrectly.
Yeah.
So I will correct people. I believe in that.
When you say you do a lot of things wrong, what's the last thing you've done wrong in this campaign?
Well, I don't know. I'd rather not get into that, but I'm sure I've made mistakes. Although, look, I'm leading in every single poll. I don't know if you saw the Florida poll just came out where I'm absolutely killing Bush and Rubio, and it's their state. And you know, so I don't know. I mean, what have I done wrong? I can think of, I guess, some things that I might have done a little bit differently. But overall, we're very happy with the campaign. Look, I have a very simple theme. I want to make America great again.